Before we dive in, please make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on these conversations.
Definitely.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us because our mission today is to unpack something truly historic. We are looking at the total, undeniable collapse of a military legend.
Right, a legend that has shaped global politics for decades, really.
Exactly. I mean, for over half a century, Soviet and Russian armored doctrine cast this massive, terrifying shadow over global security. From the legacy of the old T-34 all the way up to the modern T-90M.
The supposed pinnacle of their engineering.
Yeah. But today, we're unpacking the reality of how that myth of absolute Russian armored invincibility was just systematically dismantled.
It's a fascinating and, frankly, catastrophic shift, because that invincibility it was an illusion. It was an illusion the Kremlin exported incredibly effectively for years.
It really was.
There was this mathematical confidence, the belief in possessing one of the largest operational tank fleets in human history. And that arrogance drove the strategic calculation to send forces into Ukraine in the first place.
The idea that sheer numbers would just overwhelm everything.
Precisely. The plan on paper was that these massive steel beasts would simply crush defensive lines in a matter of days. But that carefully curated myth literally evaporated in the freezing, muddy trenches of eastern and southern Ukraine.
Just completely vanished.
What we are really looking at here is a systemic failure. It is a collision of deeply flawed, arrogant tactical planning, horrific intelligence failures, and Ukraine's rapid lethal adoption of asymmetric defensive warfare.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the visual evidence we have of this collision is absolutely staggering to me. We are seeing this sprawling graveyard of shattered steel. And honestly, looking at the ingenuity of the tactics, it feels like a modern David versus Goliath story.
It very much is.
You probably remember that now iconic footage that came out of the front lines in Donetsk. We're talking about an American-supplied M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle facing off against a Russian T-90M. Now, the T-90M is supposed to be the undisputed pride of Russia's operational ground forces, right? The absolute pinnacle of their heavy armor.
Right, it's a heavily armored main battle tank designed to completely dominate head-to-head engagements. It's supposed to be an impenetrable fortress on tracks.
Exactly. And yet, in this footage, you see the Bradley, which is a much, much lighter vehicle, just systematically dismantling it. It's incredible to watch. But how does that actually work in practice? How does a Bradley's 25mm cannon completely paralyze a heavily armored T-90M?
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of that specific engagement, because it is a textbook example of asymmetric power dynamics exposing systemic design flaws. Russian military doctrine relied heavily on sheer weight and thick armor, but the Bradleys used superior optics, vastly better situational awareness, and a rapid rate of fire. As for the 25mm Bushmaster cannon, it's not trying to punch a massive hole through the thickest part of the frontal armor.
But you couldn't do that anyway, right?
Exactly. Instead, it's firing armor-piercing, discarding sabot rounds. Basically, these incredibly dense tungsten darts traveling at supersonic speeds.
Wow. So it's about precision over brute force.
Precisely. They aimed a beam-like stream of these darts directly at the T-90M's optical systems and the fragile turret ring. They completely blinded the heavier tank in seconds. And the kinetic energy also causes something called spalling.
Which is when the metal fragments inside the tank, right?
Yes. The sheer impact on the outside of the tank sends lethal fragments of metal ricocheting around the inside of the cabin, even if the main armor isn't fully penetrated. It demonstrated to military academies all over the world that heavy armor is essentially useless if your lighter, faster opponent can just outsee and outshoot you.
It really is incredible to see the ingenuity behind these asymmetric tactics working in real time. It completely flips the script. And the nightmare for those armored crews didn't stop with Western vehicles. Looking at the data drops from early 2026, there was this intense combat footage showing a Russian T-80 tank completely isolated, struggling to push through deep, unforgiving snow.
A sitting duck.
Literally. And then it just becomes the target of a swarm of FPV drones from Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade.
And for those listening who might not follow drone warfare closely, FPV stands for first-person view.
Right, so the pilot is miles away, wearing VR goggles, essentially flying this thing manually with terrifying precision. You see this unedited footage of a massive armored behemoth helplessly taking blow after targeted blow from these small, agile drones until it's finally destroyed in a massive internal explosion.
It's brutal.
There is a dark irony here, though. I mean, you have these intimidating multi-million-dollar war machines being completely bullied and dismantled by cheap, buzzing plastic drones and hit-and-run tactics. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that the threat isn't just raining down from the sky, it's a fundamental shift in the tactical balance on the ground. Take the events from February 2026 in the highly contested Pokrovsk sector. Russian mechanized forces thought they were concealed in ruined buildings and tree lines, but they ran into Leopard 2A4 main battle tanks operated by Ukraine's 155th Mechanized Brigade.
And the Ukrainians used those Leopards very differently than traditional Soviet tank doctrine dictates, right? According to the data I have, it highlights their shoot-and-scoot tactics.
Exactly. It was a permanent, lethal lesson for the Russian commanders. The German-made Leopards utilized their superior fire control systems. These systems physically stabilize the main gun, allowing the tank to move at high speeds over rough terrain while the gun stays perfectly locked on a target.
So they never even have to stop to aim.
Right. They executed successive, highly accurate shots, wiping out the identified Russian armor, and then rapidly withdrew before any Russian counter-battery artillery could even calculate their position. It's a perfect synergy of advanced Western tech, accurate intelligence, and relentless drone deployment.
It really is a masterclass in degrading an opponent's massive stockpile. And speaking of masterclasses, we're trying to build one right here on the channel. So if you are enjoying this deep dive, please don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
It really helps us keep doing these deep dives for you.
It truly does. Now, you have to wonder, the Kremlin military command obviously wasn't just sitting there twiddling their thumbs while their prize tank fleets got absolutely decimated.
They certainly tried to adapt.
Right, they tried to roll out countermeasures. According to the data I have, the Russian military-industrial complex was publicly claiming they had these highly effective antidotes to the drone curse. One of the biggest was this electronic shield.
Ah yes, the vulnerabilities.
Yeah. They took portable signal jamming systems, mounted them with multi-directional antennas right onto the turrets of their frontline tanks, and gave them this intimidating name, vulnerabilities. The idea was to project an invisible electronic dome that would just cut off the signal of any approaching drone.
Which raises an important analytical question. How often does laboratory theory actually survive battlefield reality?
Let me go. Not very often.
Not at all. The critical failure here is that Russian planners completely underestimated the adaptability of Ukraine's decentralized military engineering. It's pure arrogance. The Ukrainians operate almost like a rapid response hive mind.
They didn't just give up when their screens went to static.
Exactly. They immediately integrated sophisticated frequency hopping software into their drones to bypass the shields.
But did they also introduce AI? Because the data mentions autonomous targeting.
Yes, and this is where it gets truly dystopian for a tank crew. They introduced AI-powered autonomous dive targeting system, essentially kamikaze algorithms.
Wait, autonomous. So the drone literally drives itself for the final strike.
Exactly. If the vulnerabilities jammer actually worked and severed the human pilot's video connection, the AI simply took the wheel.
Wow.
It recognized the tank, calculated the final dive route into the tank's weakest point, and executed the strike completely independently.
So the electronic shield is totally useless against it?
It is worse than useless.
Yeah.
And this is the fatal systemic flaw of the vulnerabilities. Emitting massive amounts of jamming signals on a chaotic battlefield actually turns you into a highly visible, glowing electronic beacon.
Oh, because they can track the signal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just broadcasting your exact location to the enemy's electronic warfare units. Those expensive jammers just made the elite T-90Ms the most obvious priority targets in the sector.
That is just wild. Your own supposed shield becomes a giant neon bullseye. And if electronic warfare failed them that spectacularly, how did they try to hide physically? I know they attempted to roll out thermal camouflage.
The Nikidka covers.
Right. A literal invisibility cloak. State media gave it massive fanfare, claiming these synthetic covers would completely mask the tank's engine heat signature and reduce its radar profile, hiding them from the thermal cameras on the night hunting drone.
Which, again, might look flawless on paper in a climate-controlled testing environment. But the laws of physics are completely unforgiving on an actual battlefield.
You can't cheat physics.
You really can't. A synthetic cloak designed to conceal static internal engine heat simply cannot mask the immense, glaring friction heat that is generated when the massive metal tracks of a 40-ton tank grind across rough, muddy terrain.
Not to mention when they actually shoot the main gun.
Exactly. No piece of fabric is going to hide the blinding thermal bloom and the massive explosion that occurs at the muzzle every single time that gun fires. The Russian defense industry fundamentally failed to account for the dynamic, chaotic reality of high-intensity combat.
It's no wonder the troops on the ground started panicking, because when the multi-million-dollar jammers and the fancy thermal cloaks fail, you get what can only be described as reactive armor madness. I have to admit, it's almost hard not to chuckle in disbelief at the footage.
It is quite a sight.
You have these terrified Russian soldiers frantically slapping standard Contact 1 and Contact 5 explosive reactive armor bricks onto literally every single empty square inch of their tanks. It looks like a poorly packed suitcase, just bricks everywhere. They were trying to build improvised brick walls around themselves.
It was a desperate, chaotic solution that ultimately sealed their fate. From an analytical standpoint, this improvised approach was a complete disaster. It did virtually nothing to increase survivability. What it did do was add massive amounts of weight, making the tanks dangerously top-heavy and severely straining their delicate suspension systems.
Which just leads to mechanical breakdowns in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And when you add that much weight, you drastically reduce your tactical maneuverability, especially in the thick Ukrainian mud. In the era of drone warfare, a slower, lumbering, half-broken tank just provides an easier, more predictable target for an FPV pilot.
But wait, don't those explosive bricks stop anti-tank weapons? According to the data I have, it constantly brings up tandem warheads being used by Ukrainian forces. How do those bypass the bricks?
Let's do a quick ELI 5 here. Explain it like I'm 5. A tandem warhead is specifically designed to defeat explosive reactive armor. If you look at a cross-section, it's basically 2 explosives stacked together in one rocket.
Okay, 2 charges.
When it hits the tank, the first smaller charge detonates. That triggers the tank's explosive reactive brick, detonating it and getting it out of the way. Then, a fraction of a second later, the main charge detonates, punching a superheated jet of copper straight through the newly exposed bare metal hull of the tank.
Oh wow, so they just slice through those improvised layers of contact bricks like a hot knife through butter.
Exactly. All those extra bricks were just dead weight.
It is a devastating reality check for their armored forces, and to really understand the mathematical reality of this attrition, we have to look at their reserves. Because the Russian myth wasn't just about the quality of the tanks, it was always about the endless quantity.
The endless Soviet stockpiles.
Right. I was reviewing a massive data set from the open source researcher Covert Cabal, who uses high-resolution satellite imagery to track them. They looked at Russia's 22nd storage. Historically, this facility housed a formidable reserve of about 600 heavy. Today, it has been reduced to just 80 heavily cannibalized, rusted scrap vehicles.
It's a staggering depletion.
Across one of their primary facilities, active storage is down to a mere 134 vehicles. The lots that used to be packed to the brim with tight, uniform rows of heavy armor are now literally just empty dirt fields.
And if we want to understand the depth of this systemic failure, we really have to look specifically at the T-80. The T-80, with its gas turbine engine, was supposed to be the rapid, incredibly mobile Soviet response to the American M1 Abrams during the Cold War.
Right, their elite fast tank.
But the harsh truth is that Russia hasn't built a new T-80 from scratch since the early 2000s.
Wait, really? So all those supposedly modern T-80 BVMs you see on the front lines?
They are just refurbished. They are modernized versions of decades-old, degraded hulls, pulls from those exact storage yards you just mentioned. And now, even those aging reserve hulls are severely depleted.
So they're running out of even the old stuff to upgrade.
Yes. The satellite images confirm that the specialized refurbishment facilities aren't even producing combat-ready frontline tanks anymore. The parts shortages are so severe, and the remaining hulls are in such poor condition that factories are heavily restricted to just building basic armored tow trucks out of them.
Armored tow trucks?
They are literally just making recovery vehicles to drag away the broken down equipment.
Wow. Just armored tow trucks. Yeah. That really puts the scale of the destruction into perspective. And the sheer numbers backing this up are staggering. The International Institute for Strategic Studies noted that Russia started this conflict with an active force of roughly 3,000 main battles. Today, the open source project Oryx has visually verified, meaning that there's photographic evidence of every single one, over 4,000 destroyed units.
And that's just the visually verified ones.
Exactly. And when you include infantry fighting vehicles and other specialized heavy armor, regional data sources put the total armored vehicle losses at an unbelievable 20,000 units.
This is where the brutal math of attrition becomes impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
You cannot sustain a high-intensity war when you are structurally losing well over 1,000 heavily armored tanks a year, while your maximum annual production of entirely new tanks hovers around a mere 300 units.
But why is their production cap so low? Why can't they just, build more factories?
Because building a modern tank isn't just about pouring steel. Setting up a new production line requires billions of dollars, massive specialized machinery, and years of logistical planning. But more importantly, it requires advanced components that Russia cannot easily produce domestically.
Like electronics.
Precisely. They relied heavily on French thermal optics for their targeting systems and Taiwanese microchips for their fire control computers. International trade embargoes and sanctions have completely crippled their supply chain. They're trying to build 21st century war machines with a fractured, isolated industrial base.
And the drones just keep coming.
The relentless, precise strikes from cheap, agile FPV drones have reduced the statistical chances of a tank survival to almost zero. It is a definitive victory of agile, modern technology over traditional, localized brute force.
And behind all of this burning steel, we absolutely have to talk about the human cost because the numbers there are equally staggering. And we want to be completely impartial here and just look at the data being reported by both sides.
Which is critical for a complete picture.
As of February 24th, 2026, the official detailed data from the Ukrainian General Staff reports that total Russian personnel casualties, which includes those confirmed dead, severely wounded, missing in action, and captured, has reached an astonishing 1,261,420 individuals.
A truly historic figure.
And despite the freezing conditions slowing down movement, the fighting is so heady that 920 Russian soldiers were added to that casualty list in just the last 24 hours alone.
It is a massive, unprecedented human toll, and it really highlights the intense narrative warfare happening parallel to the physical combat.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the other side, you have Russian Armed Forces General Staff officials like Sergei Rudskoy actively attempting to appease their domestic audience by focusing almost entirely on alleged Ukrainian losses.
Right.
Rudskoy officially claims that Ukrainian losses have exceeded 1.52 million.
So both sides are deeply engaged in shaping the public perception of the war's cost.
Precisely. Information is a weapon. But regardless of the domestic messaging strategies from either side, the undeniable operational reality on the ground, the satellite images, the destroyed tank hulls, the empty storage bases, tells a story of systemic, grueling attrition that is fundamentally reshaping the military landscape.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If we step back and summarize this incredible shift, it is clear that this is no longer a traditional war of rapid territorial conquest. The days of the armored avalanche are over.
They really are.
This is a grueling, unforgiving war of systemic attrition. It is actively eating away at and completely devouring the absolute largest military stockpiles ever assembled in human history. It's an incredible, if sobering, time to be watching military history rewrite itself in real time. Before we wrap up, I want to give you one last reminder. If you found this conversation as fascinating as we did, please subscribe to our channel so you can join us for more deep dives into the topics that matter.
And I would leave you with one final thought to mull over. If a 40-ton marvel of modern engineering, backed by decades of doctrine and billions of dollars in development, can be systematically dismantled by a cheap, AI-driven plastic drone, we have to ask, are we witnessing the permanent extinction of the main battle tank as we know it? And how will this completely rewrite the rules of engagement for every major military power on Earth?